the teacher mentoring to improve student learning. My name is Tara Marwa, and I am a senior policy manager here at Innovations for Poverty Action in the Philippines. And it's wonderful to have you with us. Okay, so before we get started, I want to briefly talk about what is Innovations for Poverty Action. So Innovations for Poverty Action, IPA, is an international nonprofit organization. We're founded over 20 years ago, 2002, and our mission is to discover and advance what works to improve the lives of people living in poverty. And we do that through our three streams of work. So first, we create stronger evidence to know what programs work, what does not work, and to improve the lives of those people experiencing poverty. And in terms of stronger evidence, what we mean by that is usually in the form of impact evaluations, and they are usually published in scientific journals. So that's number one. And the second is that we make sure to share that evidence strategically to the right partners and at the right time to inform their own policies and programs. And lastly, we build the capacity of our partners to be smart users of data and evidence by supporting their broader M&E needs and learning strategies. So over the last 20 years, IPA has conducted many projects in the Philippines, over 80 research projects, to generate evidence and drive impact. Okay, last year, IPA proudly revealed 14 best bets. So these are interventions with the potential to be transformative, but require further investment, further research to scale. And as part of these ongoing efforts, we recently launched the Best Bets in the Philippines webinar series. So of those 14 best bets, we've selected 4 that we're going to dive in deeper that we think are most relevant and applicable to the Philippines. So in today's sessions, that's the first of those 4. Today's sessions will be exploring emerging evidence on teacher mentoring as a tool to improve student learning outcomes. As education systems around the world, not just in the Philippines, face increasing pressure to improve learning quality, teacher development has emerged as one of the most promising strategies to fostering lasting impact. And research has shown that providing teachers with regular structured support through mentoring and professional development can lead to these significant improvements in their teaching practices, and then, of course, in turn, to student performance. So that's why we're really focusing on that and focusing on that one first. Like in many countries, the education sector in the Philippines aims to optimize allocating quite limited resources to key challenges. And it's essential that we carefully examine where and whether teacher mentoring can be effective as an intervention. And today's session will provide a platform for all of us to discuss that emerging evidence on teacher mentoring and consider its applicability in the Philippines, including opportunities and challenges to implementation here in this context. And we hope to provide an overview of also how does IPA work and how we've identified opportunities for further research in that sense. So thank you again for joining us today, and we really look forward to engaging in this session together. With that, I'm going to hand it over. I'll first introduce actually our moderator. Next slide, please, Carla. So I'll introduce our presenter and our discussants, and to moderate today's session, we're pleased to have with us teacher Sab Ongiko. Teacher Sab, as she's most known, is a public school teacher at Puliat Elementary School since 2009. Sorry if I'm saying this wrong. She finished her Master's of Education from the University of Melbourne as an Australian Leadership Awardee and earned her postgraduate diploma in education from the National Institute of Education in Singapore. So Teacher Sab was named one of the 15 women of 2015 by the Manila Bulletin and was a YOLO, Youth Leading Others, awardee of the National Youth Commission. She's been given the Bato Balani's Many Faces of the Teacher Award, the Outstanding Women in Nation Service Award. There's many awards, and Teacher Sab is currently on study leave, taking up resilience in educational context in the University of Malta under an Erasmus Mundus scholarship. So with that lovely introduction, we're so happy to have you, Teacher Sab. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Magandang hapon po. Thank you, Tara and the IPA team for organizing this important discussion and for bringing all of us together to explore one of our best bets in the Philippines, teacher mentoring and how it can improve student learning. Alam naman po nating lahat that teaching is one of the most impactful yet demanding professions, and mentoring provides a powerful way to support teachers. Tayo po, not just in navigating challenges, but in growing as professionals and positively influencing the learning outcomes of our students. So today's discussion will highlight how mentoring can be a game changer for our teachers, for our learners, and for our country. So please allow me to share with you a quick overview of what we have lined up this afternoon. We'll begin with a 10-minute presentation from IPA Scaling Director, Ms. Carla Peterson, which will be followed by a 15-minute commentary segment where our esteemed discussants, we have Director Jennifer Lopez from the National Educators Academy of the Philippines, or NEA, Ms. Mavi Unco from Teach for the Philippines, and Dr. Jenny Hoxton from the Teacher Education Council. They will each share their perspectives and experiences on teacher mentoring in 5-minute presentations. Then we shall open the floor for a 15-minute Q&A session where kayo po, our audience, will have the opportunity to ask questions and share your thoughts. So I encourage you to use Zoom's Q&A function to submit your questions at any point during the webinar, and we'll do our best to address as many as we can later in the session. So now, without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker. As scaling director, Carla leads IPA strategy to bring effective evidence-based programs to scale and increase their reach and impact. Prior to joining IPA, she served as Senior Evidence to Scale Manager at the Abdul Latif Jamil Poverty Action Lab, or JPAL, where she supported the organization's efforts to enhance the adoption at scale of evidence-based programs. Before that, she worked on the design and implementation of the Mexican government's inclusive growth strategy at the Finance Ministry. She also served as an assistant professor at IPADE Business School and a consultant for the World Bank and International Finance Corporation. She holds a Master in Public Policy from the Harvard Kennedy School and a Bachelor of Arts in International Affairs from Tecnológico de Monterrey. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Ms. Carla Peterson.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the opportunity to participate in this webinar with representatives from the education community in the Philippines. So I'm very excited to introduce today our Best Bets initiative that Tara was briefly describing, and to delve a little bit deeper into teacher mentoring or teacher coaching, which just wanted to clarify that we will be using both terms interchangeably throughout the webinar. So first, a little bit behind the motivation that the Best Bets report. So as Sarah was mentioning, a lot of what IPA does is try to discover what works in the fight against poverty. And luckily, we're not alone in this quest. And in the past few years, we have witnessed a very large increase in the number of impact evaluations that have been conducted on programs that are relevant to the fight against poverty. So if we look at this graph, what we can see is basically in the last 5 years, we have seen more impact evaluations than in the 25 years prior. So what this means is that we now know more than ever what works and what doesn't work in the fight against poverty. And yet, when we look at the number of programs that are evidence-based and operating at scale, the number remains relatively small. So here I'm showing a few examples of where IPA has been a part. So malaria bed nets, teaching at the right level, the graduation approach, cash transfers and universal basic income. And there are a few others, but it's basically just a handful of programs that are nowadays operating at scale and that are evidence-based. But there are many more problems related to poverty and development where we would like to have the right solution. And so the question is, how do we find those interventions that can actually address more problems at scale and that can also be evidence-based? And so this is the task that we launch ourselves to address: how we identify those innovations that can be successful at improving the lives of people at scale. And as you probably know, implementing a program at scale is not an easy task. So it's not only the evidence that matters, but also the delivery model, how you implement that at scale, how you sustain impacts, how you make the program effective across different contexts. So we can't do that work for every single innovation that has shown some positive results in impact evaluations. So the question is, out of all the evaluations that we have run and based on all the evidence that we have today, how do I identify the ones that actually have more promise to become established innovations in the future and reach more people at scale with effective programs and solutions? And so what IPA did was review the evidence of hundreds of evaluations to identify exactly that, those innovations that had the most promise to have impact at scale. And so what we did is we categorized the innovations in 3 different categories. So first, exploratory innovations. These are innovations that have evidence, but sometimes that evidence is very limited or is conflicting across different contexts. Then we have the emerging innovations that have strong evidence behind them, but there are still some questions remaining around the delivery model, whether they would work across different contexts, and how we can make them simpler for implementation at scale. And finally, the established innovations, which are the innovations I described in the start of this presentation, like graduation, TARL, where we have a clear delivery model and that they're still operate and that they're already operating at scale. So best bets are the emerging innovations. So these innovations that we think hold the most promise to become established innovations in the future. What this means is that best bets have strong evidence. There is some evidence of big impact. We also consider things like cost, how easy they are to implement, and whether or not there are already partners working in the space. So best bets rate very high in these criteria, or at least have the potential to meet all of these criteria with future investment in research and policy work. But as I was mentioning, we still have some questions around the best bets that we would like to address in partnership with implementers, funders, and other researchers. These questions have to do with cost benefit, how can we lower cost and optimize the intervention for delivery, standardize that delivery, simplify it, for instance, for government implementation or large implementers, improve targeting, leverage digital tools to improve delivery, and also some questions around the impact, mostly around validity in other contexts, whether there are indirect effects, variations that we might have across different target populations, and of course, long-term impacts. So this is the list of 14 best bets that Tara was alluding to in the beginning. I'll give you a few seconds to quickly go over the list. But as you can see, teacher coaching or teacher mentoring has been identified as one of our best bets in education and early childhood development. The best bets range across a wide set of sectors, which speak to the broadness of the problems in development that we would like to address, and also the range of the evidence that we have built throughout the years. So what do we know about teacher mentoring as an effective intervention to improve student learning? So I'd like to start with how we are defining teacher coaching or teacher mentoring. These are basically dedicated educational professionals that provide key inputs such as training, advice, and feedback to teachers who are in service. So this intervention can be a standalone intervention, or it can be part of bundled, more complex interventions, such as structured pedagogy or teaching at the right level. What the evidence shows is that the cost is moderate, so more can be done to reduce the cost, but we don't think that this is a barrier to scale. And what is more important is that evidence has shown that it actually has the potential to be more cost-effective than other forms of professional development for teachers, such as training and other centralized forms of teacher development. So what do we know so far from the evidence? We know that coaches are more effective when they are equipped with structured tools, for instance, observation guides, and when they're not spread thinly across too many schools. A study in the US showed positive effects of coaching on teacher pedagogy and student outcomes that was valid across both pre-primary and primary education. A study in Kenya showed that outcomes are better for students where teachers are supported by coaches that were only covering 10 schools instead of 15. And research in Peru found that a national coaching program was actually very effective at substantially improving student learning. So gaining between 0.25 and 0.33 standard deviations increases in test scores. So this shows the potential of teacher coaching as an effective intervention at scale. And in South Africa, what they did was compare teacher coaching to residential training. And what it showed was that even though in the beginning residential training seemed less expensive, teacher coaching was actually more impactful and managed to maintain impacts throughout a longer period of time, which made the intervention more cost effective. So in this study, both coaching and residential training improved teacher techniques, but the effects of residential training faded much sooner than teacher coaching that included a component of refreshing and working with teachers throughout a longer period of time. So what would we like to learn? So some of the questions that we have around teacher coaching that we would love to address in partnership with some of you here in this webinar have to do with how to recruit, how to train, and how to maintain an effective coaching workforce, which is something that we've seen a lot of education systems struggle with. What is the right dosage, duration, and focus of coaching to determine the most effective approach and how that varies across different systems? And if and how we can better leverage technology to deliver coaching in a more affordable way. So what does this mean in terms of next steps? So the Best Bets report that we launched last year is, of course, trying to share relevant evidence, but it's mostly a call to action. So what we want to do is partner with implementers, researchers, and funders to address some of the questions that still remain around best bets, and in this case in particular around teacher coaching. So what we want to help partners, implementers do is apply the evidence behind the best bets to be more effective at tackling global issues, work with funders in investing so that we not only implement these interventions, but that we also invest in answering some of the remaining questions that we have to make these interventions more effective around the path to scale. And finally, work with researchers to address the questions that are relevant for implementing partners in this path to scale. And IPA plays a very important role as a convener of these coalitions and also as a learning partner to make sure that we're addressing questions that are relevant along the path to scale. And the final goal, of course, is to impact the lives of people living in poverty in a way that is cost effective at scale. So I'm very excited to hear from you how we can together work in addressing some of the questions that we still have around teacher mentoring and hopefully bring these interventions to more teachers and more schools for the benefit of students in the Philippines and more broadly. Thank you very much. I'll hand it back to you, Sabrina.
Thank you, Ms. Carla Peterson, for sharing about best bets. It's good to know that in a context like in the Philippines where there's a lot of challenges and a lot of interventions or innovations na minsan pagod na kami gawin at implement in schools, they're not always effective, but we are now more aware of where to direct our attention, our effort, and resources, and how providing support to these best bets through application, funding, and research can truly make a difference. Nakakatuwa din, sorry, I will say this in Filipino because for most of our audience here are teachers, nakakatuwa na teacher mentoring is one of the best bets. Kasi among all of the interventions in the education diba, sector, ang dami po laging bumababa sa atin in schools. Yung sa report, pinakita na teacher mentoring yung isa po dito. At meron na tayo nito sa Pilipinas, ibig sabihin ginagawa siya in different spaces. Pero magandang bigyan ito ng pansin kung isa pala ito sa pwedeng makatulong at pwede nating gawin ng mas malawak. So we now turn to our esteemed discussants for the commentary segment, where they will share their thoughts on the applicability, challenges, and opportunities of teacher mentoring in the Philippines. Their presentations are very short, just 5 minutes each. So I encourage everyone to not go anywhere. Try not to be distracted by other things in your computer or wherever you are. Just sit tight and listen carefully. So to start, it is my pleasure to introduce Director Jennifer Lopez. Director Jennifer E. Lopez is the Director 4 of the Department of Education's National Educators Academy of the Philippines, a role she began in February 2024. She has risen through the ranks from secondary school teacher to education program supervisor in Region 4A and has led key initiatives at the Bureau of Human Resource and Organizational Development including integrating the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers into HR systems. Dr. Lopez holds a PhD in linguistics and has earned a postgraduate diploma in applied linguistics from the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization Regional Language Center, or SIMIO RELC, in Singapore. She has received numerous awards, including the 2024 Southern Luzon State University Outstanding Alumni and the 2022 Philippine Normal University Gawad Sulo Eminent Alumni. In 2023, she was appointed as a governing board member of SIMIO Regional Center for Quality Improvement of Teachers and Education Personnel in Language, where she was elected chairperson of its 14th governing board meeting in Bali, Indonesia. Please welcome Director Jennifer Lopez.
Thank you. Thank you, Teacher Sab. Good afternoon, fellow educators and stakeholders. First and foremost, on behalf of my Undersecretary for HROD, Yusek Willie Cabral, we would like to thank Innovations for Poverty Action for this opportunity to learn and contribute to this discussion on the applicability of teacher mentoring in the Philippines, opportunities and challenges. Maraming salamat po. We all know that teacher mentoring is really a vital strategy for enhancing teacher quality and improving student outcomes in the Philippines. And the National Educators Academy of the Philippines, or NEGAP, recognizes the importance of mentoring in supporting teacher development, particularly in rural and disadvantaged areas. Mentorship is not just about pairing experienced teachers with new educators. It's about fostering a culture of collaboration, support, care, and continuous learning. Our research, backed up by practice, specifically when I handled and championed the campus journalism program in one of the regions in the country, which I know Yusek Dads is also watching right now, shows that effective mentoring improves teacher retention, enhances teacher confidence, and positively impacts student learning outcomes. But we face challenges: limited resources, variability in mentorship, quality, and addressing cultural and linguistic diversity are just a few. NEAP is committed to addressing these challenges by developing high-quality mentor training, context-specific mentoring models, and partnership with stakeholders. DepEd's existing mentorship programs, the school-based mentoring within the results-based performance management system and teacher induction program, have shown promising results. The Philippines results-based performance management system incorporates mentoring to elevate teacher development, and the key components comprise performance planning, monitoring, evaluation, and then development. The mentoring roles include instructional coaching, peer mentoring, leadership mentoring. Embedded activities include classroom observations, feedback sessions, action research, and collaborative lesson planning. Effective mentoring within RPMS enhances teaching practices, teacher confidence, student achievement, and school culture. However, it has to be fueled by regular communication, clear goals, and care, empathy. Meanwhile, the Philippines Teacher Induction Program leverages mentoring to empower new educators, driving instructional excellence, teacher retention, and student success through targeted guidance and support. Currently, this is under review together with the RITQ. Currently, we're also piloting the EPC Train Mentoring Model in our ongoing literacy and numeracy program, and even in the conduct of the Phase 2 training on the revised curriculum. This program enhances teaching expertise and student outcomes through EPC means engage, practice, and consolidate phases. In the engage phase, the teachers and school leaders participate in comprehensive training sessions to develop content and pedagogical knowledge. And the next, during practice, they will apply learned strategies in the workplace under mentorship. And finally, in consolidate, they will share results and refine their practices. In here, mentors will guide, provide feedback, and enhanced job-embedded learning. This program intends to promote improved teaching practices, enhance student outcomes, and continuous growth. Active participation, of course, progress updates, and workplace application are required here. Further, we are also developing online mentoring platforms to reach more teachers by offering master classes. As of this time, in partnership with the Gokongwei Brothers Foundation, we're doing mentoring teachers online. As a matter of fact, this coming inset break, NAIAP will also be offering master classes online with invited experts per learning area from the academy, joining and helping us mentor our teachers online. So we do hope that we will be helped by urging policymakers to prioritize funding for teacher quality, for mentorship initiatives. The government can support teacher mentoring and NAIAP's professional development programs by providing financial backing, policy support, infrastructure, capacity building, monitoring, and evaluation. And effective measures include allocating enough budget, because as of this time, our budget is limited to the implementation of the Matatag curriculum or the new curriculum. What else? Establishing national standards, mentoring mentors as well, and fostering partnerships to enhance teacher development and student outcomes. Likewise, we do also encourage our own educators to embrace mentoring as a vital part of their professional development, because we do believe together we can enhance teacher quality, improve student outcomes, and achieve educational excellence. We are with you, IPA. Let's empower teachers, enhance education, and shape the future of our nation, especially our country. Join us in this effort of DepEd through the National Educators Academy of the Philippines in promoting effective teacher mentoring practices. We do believe together we can enhance teacher quality, improve student outcomes, and achieve educational excellence in the country. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, Director JLo. Sorry, we call her Director JLo, yung aming lambing sa kanya, no? So Director Lopez, for sharing about NAIAP's work to develop and DepEd's work to develop teacher mentors. So nakakatuwa po na marinig kung ano yung mga ginagawa po ng DepEd and NAIAP, kasi hindi naman po lahat yan ay nakakaabot sa amin, di ba, sa field. And also parang we have to find a way to really bring professional development to scale na mas effective, kasi we've always done mass trainings, alam po ito ni Director Jennifer Lopez, but maybe sabi nga ni Director JLo, mentoring is one way to actually improve, no, parang the development of our teachers in school na mas effective siya. So may call din sa ating mga teachers to embrace mentoring. So let's if you have questions about this, you can type in your questions and then we'll tackle those in the Q&A section later. So thank you, Director JLo. Now let's hear from our second discussant, Ms. Mavi Unco, who brings a wealth of experience from both the education and private sectors. Mavi joined Teach for the Philippines in 2016, coming from a career in journalism and the private sector. She built the organization's data and impact assessment team from the ground up, leading successful internal and external research that improved TFP's programs and outcomes. She was promoted to Chief Operations Officer in 2020, and at the height of the pandemic, steered teams toward continuous operational excellence, supporting governance and fundraising, program continuity, and fostering employee safety and well-being. As CEO, her goal is to continue to drive impact at the grassroots and systems level, so Teach for the Philippines can truly move the needle for the children and communities they serve. Let's give a warm welcome to Ms. Mavi Unco.
Thanks, Teacher Sabs. Hi, everyone. It's a huge honor to be invited to be a part of the panel. Huge thanks to our partners in IPA. Big hello to Director JLo, Doc Jenny, of course, Teacher Sabs, and everyone. I think except for Carla, I've met at some point in our partnerships and in our dealings with IPA Philippines. So I work for Teach for the Philippines. We're a nonprofit organization that works to transform the education system with our core programs. I'm not going to go into our programs, but very briefly, the core of our mission is really founded on the belief that teaching creates a unique pathway for credible leadership in education. So we invest a lot of resources in improving teacher quality and developing our teachers, not just the teachers we recruit into the program and place in public schools, but also in-service teachers within the DepEd system. So we work very closely and within the DepEd system itself. Like Teacher Sabs, we deeply, deeply believe that investing in teachers is one of the most impactful ways that we can transform the system from within into the best that it can be. On the subject or on the topic of teacher coaching or mentoring, coaching and mentoring has always been a crucial piece in our approach and in our work in TFP. Our approach, or what we have trademarked as our transformational leadership curriculum, that's what we call our teacher development curriculum, is anchored on human development. What that means for us is that as an organization, while the technical skills, the upskilling, capacity building on the technical side, like content knowledge, pedagogy, are super important, we invest a lot of resources, first and foremost, on addressing adaptive leadership skills and building that. And when we say adaptive, these are more like, how do I sustain myself in the work? How do I find myself, my purpose in this line of work? Like, why am I here? How do I see my role? What are my strengths and limitations? So really starting from the self, honing our teachers' understanding and recognition of those strengths and their limitations, a lot of reflection on their values, personal, right, and organizational values, and the role within the system and the role that they play in their learners' lives. It might be harder to measure because it's definitely not as clear cut as whether you know one thing or not. But we believe that starting with the self and developing these set of skills for our teachers really builds the foundation for growth, development, and a healthy outlook and a sustainable outlook for the profession itself. We do have a lot of, as a small organization, unlike the government, right? Unlike Director JLo and NEA, we're much more agile because we're much smaller. So the way that we perceive our role in the system is more of an innovation arm. So we have a lot of liberty to play around with our coaching model, look at our, revisit that using data, and then hopefully bring the data and what we find and the insights that we uncover to the system itself. So we work very closely with the DepEd and we share whatever we learn with them as implementers, not necessarily as researchers, hoping that some of these innovations can make their way into the system for further replication and scale. In terms of our model for supporting teachers with coaching and mentoring, that journey has also been quite iterative for us. So as I mentioned, like in the beginning, the development of technical skills and adaptive leadership skills were folded into one. And so our teachers would typically have a program and training manager. That was what we used to call them. And then they would be managed by one person with a ratio of 1:20 or about 1:30 even, right? If we have a particularly big cohort. Over the years, we've found, I guess, the magic ratio is anywhere between 18-22 teachers under one coach or one mentor that we hire in service and that we maintain within the organization as part of our plantilla, if you will, to directly support and invest in the growth and development of our teachers in a personalized one-on-one way. Because as much as we're talking about scale here and replication, right, the reality is sometimes with mentoring and coaching, very often it's not one size fits all. It's a very personal journey. It starts with the recognition that teachers may have a different starting point. And while there are aspects of our approach that are standardized, the way that we deal with and support our teachers is very individualized. And so that for me is also a point of tension sometimes, because how do you speak about, standardizing the delivery model when the very approach sometimes of coaching and mentoring calls for a very individual approach? That's something we haven't quite cracked the nut yet on. But as I said, like, we're learning over the years. So what started out as like one teacher coach mentor model where you have both technical and adaptive skills folded into one, has now evolved into something that's a little bit more separate. So our teacher training team within the organization deals more with the technical aspects of teacher development, like pedagogy, while our leadership development managers, formerly known as PTMs or program and training managers, now focus on the adaptive aspects. Like, how do you set goals for yourself? How do you sustain yourself in this work? Like, how do you deal with stress? How do you emotionally regulate, right? How do you deal with all of the things that, because it's no secret that many of our public school teachers are overworked, right, and overburdened. And so when they have to work very often in challenging contexts, how do then they take care of themselves so that they can take care of others? Apart from that, we also focus a lot on building communities of practice. So embedding within our approach, not an over-reliance on coaches and mentors, but really trying to develop within the school groups and the school communities this culture of mentoring among themselves and building a culture of learning among themselves, because we think that's the most sustainable path. You can't always have like a dedicated coach. Human resources are scarce, or it's hard to allocate. You don't always have the bandwidth nor the available resources to do that. But if you build that approach and that mindset within the community, then you have a much better shot of building an enabling environment within the schools that we work with. So I guess lastly, right, like this entire journey of ours, learning from our early bets as well on developing and supporting teachers through mentoring and coaching, has been very quite difficult, quite challenging. It's like it involves like testing a few things, tweaking where we can, and refining, but it's also yielded very encouraging results. So in our internal research cycle last year, we piloted a unified version of a functional literacy and life skills program that we roll out for our learners, that the teachers that we support with coaching and mentoring implement. And we found that it really produces pretty remarkable outcomes for our kids who are at most vulnerable, and in a much shorter amount of time. And so if you look at the line between supporting teachers and the way that that positively impacts student outcomes, it may not be directly a straight line, but there seems to be evidence to suggest that one impacts the other, right? And so for us, that's very encouraging. And that really drives us to keep improving in our approaches and in our model for supporting teachers better and making sure that they have the resources that they need to continue to grow and develop in the work.
Thank you, Ms. Mavi, for what you've shared. Nakakatuwa po yung TFP model of teacher leadership development and mentoring. What TFP does is really inspiring, and it reminds us how establishing an enabling environment for our teachers is really important in that mentoring aspect then. No? Hindi lang pwedeng, sige, ano lang, i-train lang natin teachers, pero the environment also helps. And when you support teachers, like with what Miss Mavi mentioned, no, there's an impact on our students as well. So talagang mahalaga tutukan ang ating mga guro. Na hindi sana sila na overwhelmed din sa tutok na ito, di ba? Yun yung balance na kailangan natin ng tutukan yung mga teachers, pero at the same time, paano ba hindi din ma-overwhelm ang mga teachers, yung enabling environment na mention ni Ms. Mabi. So it's a question for all of us to think about also. So thank you, Ms. Mabi, for that. To complete our panel of discussants, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Jenny Hoxton. So Dr. Jenny Hoxton is the Executive Director 5 of the Teacher Education Council Secretariat, supporting the policy work of the Teacher Education Council. She previously served as Director of the Research Institute for Teacher Quality and Vice President for Academics at the Philippine Normal University. She also sat as a member of the Standing Committee on Teacher Education of the Educational Commission 2, or EDCOM 2, and held the Venancio Mendiola Professorial Chair in Literature in TNU, and the PUP Professorial Chair in Literature for all her work on the literature curriculum. She was the recipient of the Bravo Empowered Women Award from Zonta Makati and Security Bank. Dr. Hoxton has also been a UNESCO consultant, collaborating with education ministries in Uzbekistan, Bhutan, Myanmar, and Mongolia to develop teacher competency assessment tools. She holds a postdoctorate in research from the University of New England, Australia, and her research interests include teacher cognition, assessment, teacher quality, and gender studies. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jenny Hoxton.
Thank you, Teacher Sab. Magandang hapon po. I thank our partners from the Innovations for Poverty Action for this opportunity to discuss what we hold dear, what I personally hold dear, and that's the context of teacher mentoring, coaching, and teacher quality, and what we in the Teacher Education Council is geared up to do. So I'd like to begin with the context that to be able to mentor and to be able to coach is a 21st century skill. The idea is to be able to capture the essence of unlearning and relearning. And we do that by a system of having somebody mentoring and coaching us in the workplace, which is critical in this discussion. The idea of to mentor and to coach in the perspective of the Teacher Education Council is in the workplace. However, I'd like to note a concept that I also read from the IPA policy note. And may I quote the IPA policy note, what's needed next? IPA said, a key concern is the coaches themselves. Recruiting, training, and maintaining an effective coaching workforce is a critical challenge for education system. I would like to say in my years of supporting teacher education, coaching and mentoring is not for everyone. Just like writing instructional material is not for everybody. Some of our teachers would be able to develop instructional materials exclusively for use of their students, but some of us would be able to deliver instructional materials that could be replicated and scaled up across the country. Not all of us will be able to deliver high quality testing materials that the country can use, but definitely we know bits and pieces of assessment. Not all of us would be able to stand in front and be able to mentor all the rest, but most of us will be able to support all of these points. So the idea of the Teacher Education Council is to find first who the coach and who the mentor is. So para hindi pagod ang teachers natin. Because you bring them to all of the professional development of being a mentor and a coach, but they're not for that. So when we look for them first, we gather enough data. Who are they? Who are they really in terms of empowering them, in terms of training them? Did they enter the teaching profession or Department of Education for that matter as mentors or as coaches? Were they trained in the pre-service? Are they being trained in their graduate programs? Is there context enough within the department that would allow them the space to be mentors? If not, then we need to support them first. So finding them is critical in this area. Otherwise, our teachers will be, always bombarded with a lot of things that just they could not get the context because again, they miss out on the preliminary perspective, and that is, are they ready to be coaches? Now, when we find them, it is critical from the point of view of the Teacher Education Council to be able to develop the system. When do we coach? When do we mentor? What does it mean by mentoring in the job? Does it mean I go to your classroom all the time? Does it mean I need to observe you all the time? Would it be what the ground are saying or the field is saying, packets of intervention? What does that mean? If I have been a teacher of English for so long, do I need to be mentored on all aspects of teaching? Or what data are we gathering? What system do we have in a school that allows mentoring to happen? When do we do the mentoring? Our teachers are loaded, as most of the discussants mentioned. So when does the mentoring happen? When does it become a reality in the ground? Otherwise, things are just lip service. And finally, I'd like to point out in the system the purpose of the mentoring. It's never to overpower one, because a mentor is always to support, and a coach would be able to specify a need. Finally, the Teacher Education Council aspires for a view that a mentor and a coach is developed through years. We take it slowly, but consistent. There must be consistency in the development of our mentors, because part of our job expected of us by the law, by our law, is to be able to link the needs of the profession, and that's mainly the bigger employer is the Department of Education, to what we do in the teacher education institutions. So there must be that layer of continuity between supporting our students from the pre-service education, linked them to enter the profession through professional development programs, and then allowing them to grow in the system such that their view of mentoring and coaching are not theoretical, but always a link, a good link between theory towards practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Jenny. Nakakatuwa po kasi mahalaga po yung minention nyo about tahe. Tahe dun sa career progression namin mga teachers, no? Parang that mentoring should be there from the very beginning, from pre-service to in-service and throughout our career progression. And ang mahalaga po yung mga questions na binato nyo rin po sa amin, di ba? Sige ba, ang dapat maging coach and mentor. Paano ba to dapat? Ano bang itsura nito? Ano bang itsura nito when you see it happen inside the classrooms, and how do we know it's effective then, di ba? Ang ganda. So thank you, Dr. Jenny. So again, my heartfelt thanks. A heartfelt thanks to all our discussants, Director Jennifer Lopez, Ms. Mavi, Dr. Hoxton, for sharing such valuable perspectives and experiences. I just want to share a few takeaways, no, from what they have discussed. Nakakatuwa na marinig na halimbawa from NAEAP that we have innovations and strategies already there in place. Pero sinasabi din ni Director Jenny Lopez na hindi to kaya ng government alone. Parang she's inviting everyone to take part in this. It's a collaborative effort to make teacher mentoring happen in the Philippines. Ms. Mavi was sharing about a TFP model, and she I agree with how much he reminds us about we have to take care of the teacher and make sure na it's not just about being good inside the classroom but also feeling good as a teacher, di ba? Because that also impacts how you do well, how you teach well. Kung hindi tayo okay, hindi rin magiging okay ang ating pagtuturo. And then Director Jenny was also saying about yun nga, parang it's not for everybody. So we should think about sino ba ititrain natin dito to really focus our resources. Hindi to para sa lahat. That's what she's saying. Pero kung makapili tayo ng magagaling na teacher mentors and coaches, lahat ng teachers, at magawa natin to in-scale, lahat ng teachers pwedeng mag-benefit dito at gumaling. So, and I guess parang akin, we have to look at mentoring as sabi nga ni Director JLo, it's not just pairing teachers but creating a culture of support and care. So it's not just about improving individual skills, not just improving the personal skills and the competencies of the teacher, but also putting up structures of support around the teacher. So that includes well-being, not just about performance. Kasi minsan ang sukatan din, nagpa-perform ba si teacher? Pero we don't measure if mentoring is really effective. Dapat si teacher din, natutulungan na hindi ma-overwhelm. Nabagitin to ni Director Jenny, di ba? Natutulungan tayo sa trabaho natin, but also yung well-being natin napapangalagaan. And we have to have that kind of culture in the Philippines. Baka yun yung what's missing, no? We've tried different strategies before, or we've tried the same strategies before, expecting different outcomes. But maybe we can take a look at teacher mentoring and how can we scale this up? How can we come together and work together so that mentoring is more effective in the Philippines? And let's see, what happens if we do that. So now it's time to hear from you, our dear audience. We'll be dedicating the next 15 minutes for your questions and thoughts. So again, please use Zoom's Q&A function to send in your questions, and I'll do my best to address as many as possible to our speakers. We'll invite Ms. Carla Peterson again to join the Q&A with our discussants. So let's begin with our first question. To all our speakers, so we can start with anyone. There's a question that ito maganda to. How do we ensure that professional development is relevant and tailored to the specific needs of teachers? How do we ensure that professional development is relevant? So I guess this question is coming from the fact na parang ang daming available professional development seminars, workshops, etc. But how do we ensure that all of these are tailored to the specific needs of teachers? Maybe we can start with Nea. So Director Jelo.
Hello, Sab.
Yes, ma'am.
Uh, Hello.
Yes, we can hear you po.
Wait, I mean,
Director Jelo pala is in CDO. Tama ba, Director Jelo? So medyo
same time
hindi
my
ganun ka okay ang
laptop
kanyang
because I
internet.
cannot hear you from my. Okay.
Nakamute po kayo, ma'am. Sige, I will go back to Director Jelo. Sorry, Director Jelo, but maybe habang inaayos niyo po, I can give the question muna to our other
So how are we
discussants.
going to the right? Hello? Hello, Sab?
Hello? Yes, yes po. Sorry. Are you back? Yes. Okay. Sige po, Director Jelo.
Hello?
Yes, you're good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So how are we going to ensure that the professional training development programs being received by teachers are relevant? At DepEd, okay, you're also part of DepEd, South, that we do have the existing development plan. We do have the ESAT. We do have the results of the performance rating, the classroom observation tools, and our principals are consolidating all of which for them to know the specific needs of our teachers. Our principals, our SDOs are empowered to develop targeted professional development training program. On their needs. But the current initiative of NEAP, more specifically this coming inset next week, we also prepared for them to ensure that, to observe that ecosystem approach that all of us per governance level were able to develop professional development programs that are customized and be ready or be available for schools. And then they have that kind of menu, okay, for them to choose from. So we're just starting it next week. So that despite the fact that some of the principals or teachers were not able to prepare for their inset because of too many things happening, we do have also makeup classes and so on and so forth. So to make this more flexible, so we have master classes as well. Okay, so all of these are ready, available, somewhat like concept of pharmacy. So once you need it, all you have to do is to ensure that the principals are also informed on how to manage all of this. So we just did our orientation yesterday regarding this matter. So let's see. So we're just trying this for the first time, and then hopefully we're also trying our M&E tool for the first time as well to capture also the data on how all these things will be happening effectively. So hopefully we're hoping that for the first time we would be able to come up with all this data for us to again study this, and then by next year we would be able to provide more targeted development program for each of them, for teachers, for school heads, for supervisors, even guidance counselors in the librarian. So we have prepared a lot for them this inset, and even though we do have suspensions, they have flexibility to provide training programs for teachers within the year. Okay, and then we're going to also gather the results of which foresee if it is effective or not. And then this would be our baseline data for NEA. So that's it.
Thank you, Director
Thank
Jelo,
you.
and good luck sa ating mga inset na paparating. At ito nga po, mahalaga nga po na seryosohin natin yung ISAT. Kasi kung hindi natin ma-analyze yung ESAT, kung 'di ba yun kasi yung parang assessment ng ating needs, kung hindi natin magseryoso yun, yung design ng ating inset will not really cater to the needs of our teachers. So, mahalaga po yun. Maybe I can throw this question no to Director Jenny also from TEC kasi parang nabanggit ni Director Jenny kanina yung tahe eh. So parang even from pre-service, how do we make sure that professional development of teachers from pre-service to inset at in-service, etc. Parang how do we ensure that the professional development of teachers are tailored to their needs?
Thank you, Sab. From the Teacher Education Council, we're strong in defining professional development. The paradigm is always that professional development is something formal, something that teachers should be attending, something that teachers should be getting. Professional development as defined by career progression is an ongoing process. It cannot stop. It's an ongoing process. It has to be developmental. Therefore, if it is developmental, there must be that long view of professional development that any time that the teacher would need within a progression, within a climb. So imagine a stick. You have a stick of professional development directions. So every time that the teacher or any personnel would be able to put it in the space or put it in a perspective, they're able to, they have the time, they have allocations, they could go into that professional development. However, the concern is this is not available for our teaching personnel. The view of a program is very small when it comes to the view of professional development, because PD allows our education personnel to also grow beyond what is expected of them. So if you look at the progression from the one framework is the professional standards. So if you're expected to demonstrate content, how do you know that you're demonstrating content? If you're expected to mentor, then you're supposed to do the mentoring. So those are 2 points. But the third point that we're very strong at is data. Because if we don't have enough data, we're always like pitching in the dark, no? Like throwing all the balls to our teachers. I'd also like to say, by the sheer number of DepEd personnel, I'm talking about DepEd, it's really very difficult, no, to propose a design, no, for all of these. But without us trusting the data, then everything else will just fall into pieces. Ganon din naman ang private schools in the Philippines. Masyado rin silang madami, pero iba-iba ang kailangan nila. Finally, I'd like to say, yung professional development kasi hindi yon ibig sabihin na laging may magbabago sa'yo, no? Minsan, information is enough to be able to drive a development. Example, have we really talked to our teachers that they understand the Matatag curriculum, the new curriculum, and the reason behind the review? Because we must review. There is no other reason to review anything that we do now other than the pandemic. If there is one good purpose of the pandemic, that is a review of everything education. So there was a purpose, no? So alam ba ng guro natin ano ang purpose na ito? Ano ang nagbago? Information drive is already professional growth. Understanding why I need to teach it is already professional growth. So until we change our paradigm on what professional development is, we will never be able to answer really paano natin masigurado, no, na tama yung PD na ibibigay. Ganon din naman may tanong dito, paano natin ma-assure na natutunan nila? Exactly, no? Sinong best na makakapagsabi na natuto sila? Yung tao na nag-grow, no, at nag-develop based on what was given to them. Thank you.
Totoo po yan. Parang yung teacher mismo yung makakaramdam na, uy, natuto ako or uy, nag-grow ako. And tama si Director Jenny, sometimes the best effort is to explain to teachers why are we supposed to do this, di ba? Baka yun pa lang, because we understand it better, we can actually perform the task better kasi naiintindihan mo eh, di ba? And you can actually innovate in your own way kasi you know the bigger picture. I mean, you know why things are happening, why we have to do this. I'll go to Miss Mavi. I'm checking the time. It's now 9 o'clock. And will it be okay to extend a bit if that's all right for our participants then? So a bit lang just to get the discussion going, and then we'll end in a few minutes. So, for Miss Mavi, how do for our teacher fellows, how do you do that? Like, how do you ensure that it is tailored to the needs of your teachers?
Thanks, Abs. For us, similar to what Doc Jenny was saying, our approach to professional development, I would say, is holistic. So it's not just, the sit down synchronous sessions or capacity building, upskilling sessions that they receive. In fact, there are four components to our approach to developing teachers from pre-service to in-service. That's education. So that's, the concepts that they get from formal training sessions. There's experience, meaning we help them make sense of their experience in the fellowship journey, process those, and derive insight from that. There's exposure, the things that they encounter in the field and while they're in service, all of the curveballs that they've had to manage, also helping them sort of step back from that, get on the balcony and understand what that means for them in terms of their development. And then last is the environment, both in what they have to navigate, but also what they might want to influence in the environment and how it impacts their development as a teacher. To the question earlier about how you sort of gauge relevance and effectiveness of trainings, I think data is really just the only way that we do it. So we try to embed within our processes like very concrete mechanisms. For example, we have what we call competency-based evaluations. This is done at least once a year, where a teacher's development is not just on, certain technical skills, but on competencies that we said we value as an organization and that we're looking to develop in them. There's also surveys. So there's an annual survey also that looks at their engagement in the job and also seeks feedback on the organization itself, like how we're running things, whether they have enough support or other mechanisms of support that they need. And then there's the check-ins that their managers or their coaches do with them at least once a month, and then the monitoring visits in the field once a quarter. So all of these sort of form a portfolio around individual teachers that we look at to guide their development, but also, we look at trends that cut across and see, okay, for this particular cohort of teachers, this seems to be a common need, and we try to address that. So it's a very, as I said, adaptive, iterative process, and it's not, there are like measures in place that we leverage to get this data and so that we can use it. But how we respond based on what the data tells us is a very iterative, very creative process for us.
Actually, we need to emphasize then talaga the tools that we need to use to measure, to get the needs, no? Parang hindi lang siya parang, feel namin ito yung kailangan ng teachers. You have to ask teachers. You have to use tools and methods talaga na it's not just subjective, but really, I mean, so that innovations programs are really based on evidence, no? Na yun. So, okay. So, in the interest of time, I will ask the last question. Sorry po sa mga sa mga nagtanong, no, pero I think this is a good question to ask, and I will just siguro ask, this is a rapid fire Q&A na lang po, no. I would just like to ask the discussants to quickly share their thoughts on this. So very short answers. How can schools create an environment that empowers all teachers to see themselves as mentors, pero sabi ni Director Jenny, not everybody can be mentors, or just to be open to mentoring, no? How can we help schools encourage that kind of culture of mentoring? So sige, so pwede po ba nating umpisahan kay Miss Mavi, yung TFP experience po natin?
Sure. So this might sound a little kumbaya, but just in our over 10 years of experience, we believe that the starting point is always to create a psychologically safe environment, because teachers won't feel comfortable asking for help, being vulnerable, saying what they're struggling with, and even stepping up to try something new and make mistakes if there's no environment that allows them to feel psychologically safe and supported. So it's not always possible for all school communities, right? Like I'm not Pollyannish about this, like there are challenges that exist within the field, but anywhere that we go into as an organization, it's the kind of environment that we try to champion and advocate for, and also help foster among our co-teachers, the school heads, right? Because and just sort of pave the way for trying out things and making mistakes and feeling like they can be vulnerable when they share whatever it is that they're struggling with. So if you, at least that's my personal take on it, if you really want to build a school community or an environment that allows for mentoring or innovations like that to thrive, it all starts with psychological safety.
Yeah, and it's not always discussed or parang not always integrated in training programs. Parang kailangan ng matrain si teacher, pero hindi natin napapasok yung psychological safety na importante. Kasi if we're not okay, hindi natin I mean, teachers are really creative people, but if we are stressed, burnt out, parang the creativity is limited, and also the heart. I think you have to take care of the heart of teachers, diba? Yes. So thank you, Miss Mavi. We'll go to Director Jenny Hoffman from TEC.
Yep, modeled. If you're coming from the point of view of the leaders of the school, then the modeling, no? At may mga governance tayo. You have the school head who can model it for their teachers. Hopefully they know how to mentor. Our supervisors are placed in the governance level to support mentoring. And finally, up to the assistant and the school's division superintendent. So model that for our school, so that they can, for our teachers, so that they can develop amongst themselves a point of view first, a clear path, and then hopefully the skills to be able to mentor. Thanks.
Minsan nga po yun yung kulang. Parang we cannot visualize how good mentoring looks like kasi hindi na-experience ng teacher. So we have to find good role models na coaches and mentors para maramdaman natin kasi it's always, pag may nagko-coach, natatakot tayo kasi parang punitive siya. Hinahanap ko ano yung mali sa'yo rather than parang how I can help you grow. So really, really important for good role models in this, in the mentoring space, in coaching space. Punta tayo kay Director JLo. Kumusta po ang inyong connection, Director JLo? I hope you can,
Actually,
yes.
choppy pa
Okay.
rin yung pero sana clear ako. So,
Yes, you're
yeah, I
clear.
agree. There must be a balance of character and competence. Safe environment. The problem is systemic. So we need to create that culture wherein our teachers will feel safe and even the leaders will feel safe so that they would be able to learn and they would embrace to be mentored and they would embrace that, the knowledge or the learning or the whatever they would be able to share. So if we are not going to create that culture of care, nurturing the nurturers, I think we will not be able to mentor effectively.
I agree. No, parang what I'm studying here is resilience, but in a multi-systemic lens. And I think mentoring should be that. Hindi siya individual effort. Hindi to sa shoulder lang ng teacher mentor para, oy, sige, kailangan ko tulungan yung other teachers to grow. But it's really multi-systemic. We have to build a system of care and support around teacher mentors so they can also build that system of care and support around teachers. So talagang may layers to this. So thank you for saying that. I'll also throw this question to Carla, no? Maybe from the IPA standpoint, what can schools do to create this culture of mentoring and coaching?
Thank you. That's a very good question, and I fully agree with my colleagues here in this webinar have mentioned. I would only add that at IPA, what we're trying to explore more in terms of coaching is the broader system in which coaching takes place. So understanding the different roles that actors in the system play around education and coaching and how we can incentivize this kind of behavior throughout these different actors in the system. So teachers obviously play a very important role, but luckily they're not alone in the education system. So making sure that incentives are aligned across the different actors in the education system to provide coaching, to support coaching, and to encourage coaching is something that we're exploring further throughout the different countries that we're working with. And it's great to hear how much progress and how much thinking Philippines has done in this matter.
Thank you, Carla. So again, support is important. It cannot be DepEd alone. It cannot be schools alone. We have to really work with other people and get them involved so that the systems that we want to put up, the initiatives and innovations we want, can really happen in schools. Kasi overwhelmed na as it is, we are so burdened with so many initiatives, no? Parang there's, ano na nga eh, fatigue, di ba, with implementing programs and initiatives. So really need that kind of support. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for all your thoughtful questions and for engaging actively in this discussion. I'm so sorry we don't have enough time, but it's clear that there's an immense interest and shared commitment to advancing teacher mentoring as a pathway to improving student learning in the Philippines. So I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to our speaker, Ms. Carla, and our discussants, Director Jennifer Lopez, Ms. Mavi Ungko, Dr. Jenny Hoxton, for sharing your expertise and time and perspectives. Thank you to all our participants for your time, interest, and passion for this very important topic. So as we come to a close, it's my pleasure to turn the session over to the Senior Policy and Program Development Manager of IPA. You've seen her earlier, so Ms. Tara Marwa. So Ms. Tara, uh, I hand over the floor to you.
Longer because we're already 13 minutes over, but I just wanted to express my gratitude to these speakers, many of which I've worked with in the past and I'm so impressed by. So really thank you for finding the time. I should also note that I've been keeping an eye on the participants and we're still at 183, so only very few have dropped even though that we're over time. So I wanted to just wrap up by saying, if this has sparked your interest, being either a policymaker or an implementer, and you want to either measure the impact of your programs or find out kind of what evidence is out there and how to implement teacher coaching, get in touch. So I don't know if we still have slides on this, Carla, if you can just go to the next again. IPA essentially combines different actors. If you just go to one more slide, I'm just going to skip through everything. And right, so we combine our work with academics, right? With service providers like NGOs, or even could be banks, right? So different people that implement a program, and then government actors, many of which are in the room today, and then funders. So we're kind of in this sweet spot of getting everybody in one room and evaluating these programs together, but also scaling them up, figuring out what works, what needs to be tweaked before you scale it up further. Next slide. So I just wanted to quickly point out, this is how we engage projects and partners to kind of develop an evaluation together. If, again, this webinar has sparked your interest in that. So we have these three buckets that we need, right? So we have principal investigators, we call them academics, because all of our, I would say all of our papers, our studies are published in scientific journals. And then we work together with implementing partners. So Ms. Mavi is actually one of our cherished partners from Teach for the Philippines. We're working on a project together right now. And then we raise funds externally through donors. So we're a not-for-profit, non-governmental organization in the Philippines. We are not allowed to accept any funding from government partners. And so we're really kind of impartial in this. And so we try to, when those three actors come together, that's when we run evaluations together and we help you measure the impact of your program. Some ideas that we have in the Philippines already, next slide, these are just some projects that we're up to in terms of project development related to teacher development or teacher coaching. So we have a pilot, which is an evaluation and scaling of a phone-based tutoring program. So we've been successful in designing rigorous impact evaluation studies, including this pilot, which is now scaling this phone-based tutoring called M-Education, which we found to be very effective, which is also one of the questions that I answered in the chat. Second, there's also an ongoing evaluation of teaching at the right level, which is a very famous program at schools across 4 regions, which includes BARM, Region 9, Mimaropa, and National Capital Region. And then we also have 2 studies in the pipeline where we will design and evaluate an intervention that challenges views of harmful masculinity among adolescents, protecting learners from violence and harmful behavior such as bullying. And lastly, we will examine whether teacher training intervention in environmental education can overcome challenges on environmental beliefs or assessing the effects on both teachers and students' environmental beliefs and actions towards climate change, as well as students' learning outcomes in both environmental and non-environmental subjects. Okay, so now I think I've really stretched time. A few people dropped off. We're at 179. This is a Google form. If you want to quickly scan it before we wrap up, you'll get a completion form or a certificate of participation. And with that, I really just want to say thank you, heartfelt salamat po for all of you that joined. And really get in touch with us. You can see an email flashed up there. If you also want to get in touch with the other speakers, we'll be happy to connect you further. And we're very open for further collaboration. So thank you so much.